Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Just getting the thing in view. I keep thinking there won't be any more kitchen times for ages, you know, not till sort of early spring. And then things keep popping up. This popped up, what's today, Monday? Yesterday in Sunday's video, where we were looking stuff up on the internet and I picked on Masdevallia ignea with an ulterior motive which I didn't mention in the video. It's not doing very well, and as the point of the video was to look stuff up on the internet and interpret what you read there, try and get more out of it than is actually basically showing, this one was chosen because it's not doing very well. And as a consequence of looking it up, we actually found out it's a terrestrial, which I didn't know. And that triggered, I always sort of think, if something's not doing very well, either your environment is way off, and although mine is a bit too warm for this one, this is a cool to cold grower, it does grow okay with a bit of heat, providing the humidity stays up, which mine does normally. This has bloomed a couple of times, but just recently there's a lot more leaves keeling over. There are a lot of new growths also, but I always maintain if a plant starts to go down when it has been doing reasonably well, the chances are the reason's below ground. So let's find out what's below ground. This is the what's in my pot bit, and I suspect, apart from all the moss and the weeds, as far as the root department is concerned, probably very little, but we'll have a look. Now this was put in this basket, and I believe I potted this in live sphagnum, which would have been my collected live sphagnum. Well, there is bark in here as well, so I can't remember what the hell I did with this, but I'd like to change the media first to get rid of the weeds. The fact that it is absolutely smothered in weeds implies that this is not my normal potting mix, and the bottom is just going to fall off, which means there's not good roots. So there was some bark added. These roots have gone, as suspected, quite honestly. Now it's a matter of can we recover it. There's very little good roots showing at the moment. It doesn't mean to say we can't grow some more. It just needs enough to survive, really. Well, there's certainly not a lot of good stuff here. Most of this is gone. If it just pulls apart like that and leaves all these stringy bits, then it's not much good. Well, I'd like to get as much of the old off as possible, and hopefully that will remove the weeds. God, it's been absolutely covered in, I think it's actually ferns. Yeah, it's also very wet. Didn't actually water this today. Can't remember the last time. Look, we've got some viable roots here, but it's like you could count them on one hand. But what we do have is a lot of new growths. Excuse the racket there, that's just one of the cats going out. And we also have some quite dead bits in amongst the others, like dead places where leaves have gone and the stalks have died back. Now this one is not supposed to be potted deep, it's supposed to be sort of sat on its media. The thing is, I don't want to rip it apart. I'd rather try and maintain a decent sized plant. I'm just trying to look, see there's a new growth here. There might even be a spike, come to think of it. The problem I've got is that if you hold the plant upright, you can see it's on a slope. So if I get this at the right level, that's buried. Which means to repot it flat, I'm going to have to do that, and it's going to look a little silly. The alternative is to take these bits off. That's this little piece here hasn't grown a new growth for some time, and it hasn't got very good roots. However, this little piece here has. They're just falling apart, these sections. So what I'm trying to do is get it to the point where what's left will pop up flat. It's got a large section here. I'm going to end up with pieces. That doesn't mean to say they can't all go back in one pot. Yeah? And then they'll grow together, and it'll still, see there's a tiny little new growth there on the end of that dead bit. Got a live root there, a couple of roots in there, a couple of dead stalks, we'll have those out. Dead stalks are a very good place for rot to set in, quite honestly, especially if the base is a bit wetter than it should be. But you know, we've got a new growth here, that one's not that old, so this little section is active, and there's lots of little green bits showing where there's new bits growing, so that piece will grow. So I'm just going to get me scissors, I won't be a minute. Right, so the problem is if you keep tugging and tugging, you end up pulling the plant apart, whereas these stringy bits just need taking off. They don't do any good, and they will rot. They are so tiny that if they do actually rot, it's not the end of the world. But anything that's effectively dead that you pot is just potential trouble down the line, really. It's better to just get rid of it. Right, so there's a little piece there I can plant, and that's got green bits showing, so that's an okay piece. Let's put it in the sink for now. Right, these little pieces here. This little piece here has got a new growth and a new root showing. Its actual root section is non-existent. There are no roots there that are any good at all. So hopefully that new growth will trigger some roots. Otherwise that piece will die. It's just a matter of, so I'm just getting the dead sheaths and stuff off. So that could get going. That new growth does have a root starting, so that's another little piece. This little piece also has a new growth and also has no viable roots. See now, I'm going to have to change my mind here. The idea was, the fact that we found out this is a terrestrial, I was going to try a new media, and I did expect a not very good root system. But I didn't expect, in some cases here, a non-existent root system. So I'm not going to go ahead and pop this in that terrestrial mix. This is just going to sit in damp moss for a while and hopefully create some roots. Once I see some roots growing, then we'll have a go at potting it out properly. So we'll have to come back to this. So sorry about all those people who, you know, wanted to see the new mix, but I've changed my mind. As I said, the root system is worse than I was expecting. The plant might recover. Should have been done a while ago. It's another one left in the pot too long. I could see it was going downhill. And the trouble is, some plants, they hang in there and hang in there until the last minute. By then, the root system's gone. And at that point it starts to go down a bit quicker. Some plants show hardly any signs of failing until the last minute, and like I said, by then you've normally lost your roots. Right, so what are we going to do with this piece? Can I leave this piece whole? I'm just looking for new pieces. Next to no roots again. These are just gone. Do I keep the strength of this piece? Keep it whole. And it'll have its own little support system then. They It is actually a single piece. It's not, well, that piece isn't though. Well, that piece has lost its base. That's rotted. So that will pull out. Yeah, I think I'll try and keep that piece whole. But that's not going to stay there. Let's get this dead stuff off. I have to be a little bit more careful on this piece because there are actually some live roots, but only like two. There's this one here, that one's alive, but there isn't much else. These are just all squishy, all gone. The trouble is, if you leave a base like that on a plant, it will respond slower because the roots have got to push through all this dead stuff, and all that dead stuff can, you know, it's a breeding ground for mould and that sort of thing. But if I put it in moss, there's a sterilising effect, as well as pretty good at generating new root systems, so that's what we'll do. I'm not going to play anymore with that. There are some little green shoots showing in places. So the plant's not dead. You know, I mean, there's little things like this. It is attempting to grow. So there is some, you know, there's another little one there on the end of my thumb. So it's attempting to grow. And this one has quite a few good, right coloured leaves on it. I think what I'll do is the leaves that are dying, we'll take them off because that's all they're going to do. You know, they're not going to get better, are they? That don't happen. Although if you get really pale leaves due to a light issue, if you put the light issue right, sometimes they will actually recover, even though they look as though they're borderline dead. Some of them will come back. Right, that don't leave a lot, does it? But Masdevallias and Draculas and the like, they can generate a root system quite quickly if the root base is in the right environment for that to happen. Too wet and soggy and the base of the plant will start to rot. So the moss really does need to be just damp, not wet. Even though if this was actively growing it could stay quite wet, but not in this state. All it'll do is increase any rot that's in the base. So as a consequence of this not being healthy, I'm still trying to work out what the hell I planted this in. So, the fact that we've got this really long strand moss, I'm assuming that's my zombie moss, because the wild stuff that I collect doesn't look like that. Anyway, whatever it was plotted in, it worked for a while and then it didn't. So what we've got to do now is we'll give the it's going back in this, is it going to go back in this basket or in a pot? Because I'm just going to be standing it in moss. If I put it in there, that moss is going to keep drying out quickly, which sounds like a good thing, but it's not. Because if I miss it for a couple of days and the whole thing dries out, that's not good. So I may go and just get a clear pot. That way I can see what's going on. And the pot itself will keep the moss damp. Yeah, so I'll just have a bit of a clear up and then we'll come back and get these into something. These are going to be difficult to stand up in moss, but we might play some tricks to make that work. Right, so I'll just get rid of the rubbish and everything and I'll be back. Okay, my plant pieces have all had a really good thorough spray with the hydrogen peroxide and rinsed off. So they're ready to go. Now the plan is to just stand these not far off on the moss, but they will have to go slightly in it because they've got no roots. If they don't go slightly in the moss, they'll dehydrate. So what I'm going to do is put some loose moss in. Now that will get compacted as we start poking around. The idea is to have it deep in the pot. Yeah, there's a reason for this. And what I'm doing is I'm making a hollow in the middle of the pot as well. So what we've got is a dip, yeah? The reason for that is I'm going to put the plants in the dip and they will lean towards the edge of the pot and rest against it and not get knocked around. If you see what I mean, I'm just going to do that. So they're leaning to the side of the pot. So they'll all be dumped in the dip in the middle. I've got to go careful with some of them because they do have new growths on. Make sure those are pointing outwards where possible. That way, what I'm hoping is that the base of these plants are all at the same depth. And they're all leaning against the side of the pot, so they shouldn't waggle around. And they'll support each other, leaning against the side of the pot. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a small amount and put it straight down the middle, because that's the bit that will dehydrate, because it's not touching any moss at all. So this isn't a lot, this is just a little bit. And then I'm going to just move them away from the side one at a time and add a little bit more moss. Loose this time, no compacting at all, just loose. If it's loose and springy like this, it will absorb water from below, but it isn't wringing wet. Yeah. There shouldn't be any mould spores or anything left on these plants, and the moss itself is sterile. So although these now look like they're in too deep, they're not really in anything. This moss is just around them. It's just loose, and it should just stop the bases of the plants dehydrating. So everything is loose, no compacting, no squashing down, just loose. And all of the moss will soak up from below. It's not going to dry out. As long as there's moisture in there, it will spread itself around and each piece will have moisture. That's how moss works. It's good like that. It only has to touch another piece and it will hydrate. As long as that other piece is damp, it will hydrate. Right, so loose moss. Plants are sort of supported, they don't waggle around too much. We've got a bit of moss down the middle, just for that area. And this one will bloom quite well if it gets some brighter light. It's not getting near any bright light until it's got a root set. So this is going in the heaviest bit of shade I've got and the coolest place I've got. And we've got nice loose moss in there. We've got a transparent pot so that as soon as we get some roots, we'll see them. And we know, that potting it up properly is not too far away. But I'd like to see roots all around this pot and down the bottom before that comes out of there. Now some of those pieces may fail, yeah? They are rootless after all. And because this is all loosely packed, if one piece starts to die, it can just be lifted out without doing much disturbance. So it should work okay. Right, that's all it's going to get, no compacting, just loose. I was going to say I'll put my label back in, but I can't imagine I'm going to forget what it is. And what I do is I always have to use an opportunity when I repot to do some cleaning up. So, even my tray that the pot's going to stand in, there's no reason why that can't have a clean. Start everything nice and clean and shiny. So I've got a scrubbing brush that I keep near the sink, away from the stuff I eat off of, separate. But it allows me to give things a quick scrub. And then we can start with a clean pot and a clean tray and a clean label. Just as well put the label back in. I'm not going to forget what it is, but I've said that before, I believe. Right, now this is 1 o'clock on Monday the 28th of the 9th, and about 30 minutes ago I looked at my statistics and at that point it said I've got 7 more subscribers to go to get to 10,000. 7. Now I have to make allowances for some people leaving, because sometimes you think, oh, that's good, I've got 10 subscribers overnight, and you come back a couple of hours later and it's gone down, you know, until 3 have sort of pulled out. So it's not a static thing. So it's highly likely Monday today, halfway through the day, 1 o'clock. This will get posted later in the day, but it's being filmed at 1 o'clock on the 28th of the 9th, and my stats were looked at about half an hour ago. By the time I get up tomorrow morning, we may be at that 10k mark. We might have done it overnight. You might hear me go whoopee. You're certainly not going to see my dancing around the lounge, but those last few, I know it's every subscriber is as valued as every other one. There isn't any special subscribers. Subscribers are subscribers. But these last few to get me over that 10k do seem a bit special. I don't even, well, some people I can see that they're subscribed because they're public, but a lot of people are private. Plus, you have to bear in mind, nearly half of the people who view my videos, according to my statistics, are not subscribed. Yeah? Well, when the number's that high, I have to sort of think there must be a good reason in people's minds why they don't subscribe to a channel that they watch. You know, so anyway, whatever the reasons are, that's that plant done. Now all we can do is hope. That's all that can be done. When you're trying to rescue a plant, you do what you can, what you think is probably the best thing, which might not be, but that's what's happening to this one, and then you patiently wait. And the only thing that must not happen is that moss dries. It must stay like that, damp. Not like this, soggy. If you've got moss like this that's been in soak, give it a squeeze. That's damp moss. It's light, it's fluffy, yeah? That's what that is in there. And that won't get watered until I see signs of drying. And then it will get a trickle just to bring it back to that light, fluffy state. So there we go, and hopefully at least some of the pieces will recover and start getting some decent roots. We shall see. Thanks for dropping by. See you next time.